passenger who wasn't there. Late at night in the dimly lit streets of New Orleans, a rideshare driver named Jake receives a request. The location is near an old cemetery, adding to the eerie atmosphere. When he arrives, a woman dressed in an old-fashioned white dress steps into the car. She silently gestures to an address on her phone, but doesn't speak. Her fingers tremble slightly, as if she is cold or nervous. The glow from the screen flickers on her face, illuminating her hollow eyes. Jake notices how unnaturally still she sits, her shoulders stiff, her breath barely visible in the cool air. He wonders if she's unwell, but something deep inside tells him not to ask. The car feels heavier, as if the very air has thickened around them. Outside, the city hums with its usual nightlife, but inside the vehicle, there is only silence. So profound, it seems to swallow the sounds from outside. Every time he glances at her through the mirror, a sense of unease crawls up his spine, as if she's watching him even though her eyes remain fixed forward. The atmosphere is tense, suffocating, and Jake grips the steering wheel tighter, eager to complete the ride and leave the unsettling presence behind. The dim glow of the screen casts eerie shadows on her pale face, making her look almost ghostly. Jake notices her lips parting slightly, as if she wants to say something but no sound escapes. Instead, she merely nods once, urging him to drive. Jake finds it odd, but assumes she's just tired or shy. As Jake drives through the quiet streets, he occasionally glances at his passenger through the rearview mirror. The city's neon lights flicker against the windshield, casting strange shadows inside the car. The woman remains unnervingly still, her expression blank. He tries to ignore the creeping unease crawling up his spine, but the temperature inside the car feels like it's dropping. He grips the steering wheel tighter. The quiet between them isn't just awkward. It feels heavy, suffocating, as if something unseen lingers in the space between them. Jake swallows and clears his throat, hoping to break the silence. "Long night?" he asks, his voice sounding too loud in the hushed car. The woman doesn't respond. She doesn't nod, doesn't blink. She just stares straight ahead. A strange sensation creeps over him, an irrational fear that if he looks away, she might move in some unnatural way. The scent of the car changes subtly. At first he thinks it's perfume, floral, but old, like wilted roses. Then beneath that, something else, damp, moldy, like decaying wood. He wrinkles his nose, but doesn't say anything. Maybe it's his imagination. Maybe she's just exhausted or lost in thought. But why won't she speak? The longer she sits there in silence, the more Jake's skin prickles. He steals another glance in the mirror, and for the briefest second, he could swear she wasn't sitting in the same position as before. His breath catches. Had she moved? Or had his eyes played tricks on him? He grips the wheel and focuses on the road, heart pounding, telling himself that in just a few more minutes, the ride will be over. And yet, deep down, he knows something isn't right. She sits still, her face pale, her expression unreadable. The air inside the car feels colder than usual. He tries to make small talk, asking if she's had a long night or if she's from the area. She doesn't respond, doesn't even blink. Instead, she remains eerily motionless, her hands resting on her lap like a porcelain doll. The silence stretches on, thick and oppressive. The cold inside the car deepens, making Jake shiver despite the warm Louisiana night. A strange scent lingers in the air, a faint mix of old perfume and something damp, like decaying flowers. Something about her presence makes him uneasy, but he brushes it off, eager to complete the ride and put the unsettling encounter behind him. Jake finally reaches the address, a crumbling old house surrounded by overgrown weeds. The street is eerily silent, with no lights on in the nearby homes. The paint on the house is peeling, its windows dark and vacant, like empty eye sockets staring into the void. The wooden steps leading to the front door are broken, warped by time and neglect. A strange sensation creeps over him, like unseen eyes watching from the shadows. A distant rustling in the bushes makes him freeze, but when he turns to look, there's nothing there. His hands tighten around the steering wheel as an unshakable sense of dread coils in his chest. He turns around to tell the woman they've arrived, but to his shock, the back seat is empty. The door never opened. She simply vanished. Jake's breath quickens. He flicks on the interior light, scanning the seat for any sign of movement, any trace that she had been there. But there is none. The cushion is undisturbed, no lingering warmth, no indentation where she sat. A chill runs down his spine as he looks around, but there's no sign of her anywhere. His fingers tremble as he reaches for his phone, but before he can dial anyone, a shiver ripples through his body. The air inside the car suddenly feels suffocating, as if something unseen lingers just beyond his sight. And then, in the rearview mirror, he swears he sees something. A fleeting shadow, just for a split second, like a figure standing behind the car. But when he whirls around, the street is empty. His heartbeat thunders in his ears. Jake swallows hard, his pulse racing. He needs to leave, now. Slamming the car into gear, he speeds away, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. The crumbling house disappears into the night behind him. But the unease doesn't fade. Something followed him there, and deep down, he knows. This ride isn't truly over. Confused and shaken, Jake steps out of the car. He notices an old man standing on a nearby porch, watching him with curiosity. Jake approaches and hesitantly asks about the house. The old man chuckles grimly and tells him that no one has lived there for 50 years. The house has remained abandoned, its windows dark and lifeless, as if time itself had forsaken it. The old man shakes his head and continues, telling Jake that many have claimed to see strange lights flickering inside at night, and some even report hearing whispers carried by the wind. In fact, a young woman who once lived there died in a tragic accident decades ago. She had been on her way home in a taxi when she disappeared. Jake feels his stomach drop. A cold sweat forms on his brow as he quickly checks his phone, looking at the details of the ride. But the trip is no longer in his history. It's as if the ride never happened. His pulse quickens and his fingers tremble as he refreshes the app repeatedly, hoping for some kind of error. Nothing, his thoughts race, trying to find a logical explanation, but every possibility only deepens his dread. He remembers the icy feeling in the car, the eerie silence of his passenger, and the vanishing act that defies reason. Was she real, or had he unknowingly carried a spirit trapped between worlds? He remembers the icy feeling in the car and the silence of his passenger. Could he have just given a ride to a ghost? His rational mind refuses to accept it, but deep inside, he knows the truth.